We've got some work to do. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. So Gary of Gary's Classic Guitars in Loveland, Ohio, just gave me free reign to all of his stock and inventory, and we're just gonna do this random case pulling and have some fun today. So let's start with this one. Looks like we got some sort of a mid-70s Gibson case. Oh, look at that, one for the lefties. So I think I saw this one on his website. It's a 1974 left-handed Les Paul Custom. I actually had one of these in left-handed before, but somebody had like stripped the finish down to a bare natural, so I got a great deal on it and I just strung it up backwards and had some fun. But that is indeed what this one is. You don't see too many from this era in left-handed, so that's kind of cool. But the original frets on these 20th anniversaries are so microscopic and tiny. Somebody's refretted this one with much larger fret wire. Wow, this one was actually surprisingly played quite a bit on the back. Somebody had that buckle on. And check out the neck wear on that. That's very authentic. However, I'm looking at this like a right-handed guitar right now, so like that's where somebody's thumb could rub against, but no, that's actually the opposite side of his hand. The thumb rubbing would just be over what's here. You certainly don't see those every day. This video is part of a small series, and in the first one, Macmillan here said it would be interesting to know the value or going price of the models, so I'm going to include them in this episode, since some of these can get kind of expensive. The asking price on this one is $10,000. However, there's one thing that my head said, hey, I need to talk about this, and I forgot. This one has the Gibson Schaller tuners. I only bring that up because sometimes the 20th anniversary inlay was also put on 1975 examples, and that's usually one of the tell signs. In my opinion, those M6 branded Schallers are the way better tuners as compared to the waffle backs that you'll typically find. The fun part about being here is most of what Gary has is true vintage. Like, look at that. Beautiful Esquire, super ultra ambered over in color. I'm always used to seeing these things in photos and online, but just taking it straight out of the case, you notice the neck profile. It goes from a regular C shape with like maybe a little bit of a bump if you're really feeling for it, but then it slims down and just becomes an absolute V. That is unique. But the finish definitely has some interesting wood grain and checking. If I had to guess, I would imagine this is a refinish. He's got it tagged as a 1951 Esquire. Looking good. I couldn't find this exact one, so maybe this is a newer arrival, but here was a different Esquire in his shop for $46,000. That is listed as an older refin, so maybe this one would be similar? I don't know. You'd have to email him. So this must be his fender section. We've got one of these cool green cases there, but I'm more interested in this. I was thinking it was like a Stratocaster case, but no, it says Goya over here, and then it gets randomly skinnier up there. But shame, there's nothing in there. This must be his spare case territory. But for some fun, I decided to look up what this model is, and whoa. Look at that headstock. It's like if you take a Fender one, stretch it out, and just chop a little bit out the top. But hey, I guess you could fit 12 strings on one of those if you really need to. But wait till you see the body. It's kind of like Jazzmaster Jaguar-ish. However, you get this interesting faux wood grain pattern to the pickguard, and you got a whole bunch of fun switches, truss rod wheel. It looks quirky and fun for $1,000. Let's see what he's got sleeping in here. Yeah, it's one of those mid-60s melody makers, the freaky fish ones, that's what I call them. I love these little things. Mainly because it's a great way to get something that kinda looks like an SG, like as far as the finish, but without having to pay the true 60s money. This one really doesn't have too much finish checking and is ridiculously clean. That might be considered collector's quality to some. But the other thing to know about these is their neck profiles. They get really chunky towards the 12th fret, but they start off rather slim. And I've always personally been a big fan of that. And these make great like TV/couch guitars, because they're very acoustically resonant. Now as far as the pickup and stuff, yeah, it's nothing to write home about, but you can modify these to have humbuckers. Nowadays, you don't even have to route them out. They've got stacked humbuckers you can throw in there. The next one to catch my attention, we've got some sort of a red case here. I have no idea what to expect, what might be in here. Oh, nice. I think these are called Music Masters. So kind of like that melody maker we were just looking at. However, this is Fender's take on one, and it's a little bit older. The tag in the case calls this one a 1957. So kind of like a Mustang or a Duo Sonic, just a little bit more stripped back. But honestly, this thing's really cool. I'm sure it has some sort of a fancy name to it, but it reminds me of like a desert sand or something. And then you just get your bare maple neck. But again, it's the neck profile on these old fenders. It's so fascinating. It's got such a hard V shape right here in your chording area. But as soon as you get to like the 5th fret, it just turns into a fairly rounded C. So V transitioning to C.
Looks like he's asking $7,000 on this one, and hey, I got lucky. It actually is called desert sand.
Let's go ahead and try another one from this area. The silver case contains, one of these guys. The Fender Mustang. Now, I actually have had a vintage one of these on the show before, but it's always cool to see these classic colors in person. The tag in the case calls it a 1966. The old vintage tortoiseshell pickguards definitely have a different look to them in person, especially when you catch them in the light like this. But the neck profile on this one doesn't have as much of a V to it. It's just primarily a C shape with just a little bit of it towards your 1st fretting area.
According to the website, this is also a one-owner example, and he's asking $4,695.
But I'm deadly curious to see what's in these 2 tiny cases. It looks like it's gonna be like a violin. The moment of truth. Yeah, I don't know anything about this, but it is cool. I've never seen a neck rest like that before. It's got a diamond pattern etched into it, but this thing definitely has a little bit of patina, you could say. But even if you're not really into violins and orchestral instruments, did you know a lot of them have flame maple backs? So if you appreciate fine woods and craftsmanships, sometimes it's cool to check these things out too. But this next tiny one, it weighs a ton, so it wouldn't surprise me if it's a lap steel. Sure enough, an Electar Zephyr. And an original bikini plaque Epiphone one. So I've never actually held one of these things before. It's so strange. Your action's all the way up here, well, obviously because you have to play it as a slide guitar, but I didn't realize they would be so chunky. But it makes sense because you'd have to put it on a tabletop and you don't want to move it around too much. But the ornamentation for your fret markers kind of reminds me of the fancy Gibson banjos. But the serial number on this one looks like 7337, and check out those tuners. It's the same one that was on the Joe Bonamassa Epiphone from a couple of years ago, the Black Beauty. Cool to see that on the official model.
This one's asking price is $1,200.
It looks like we've got some semi-hollows over here. This looks like it'll be early 70s again. Oh, nice. So that's a 330. That's got a really nice look to it. Chrome P90 pickup covers. It's not the Epiphone variant, but our Gibson brethren. But our tag puts it to 1963. It's got a lot of good finish checking to it. And I like the wood grain down in this area. But then our back is just a natural walnut color.
And the asking price on this 63 model is $10,000. However, he also has a 67, which is a little bit less expensive, but that usually comes down to nut widths. This was something that just walked in the door the day prior to me arriving. Apparently, this is an insanely rare vintage archtop. If I remember correctly, it's from 1959, but it's a George Goebel model. And reportedly, they only made 2 of these in the natural finish. But what's so spectacular about this one, outside of being in really clean condition, is the fact that it was the only one that wasn't modified for other electronics. And any modifications you do to a guitar will generally devalue it. So if you're like a super archtop collector, he's got this in. It's not listed. I can't imagine it'll be cheap, but this thing was peak if you're into these kinds of guitars.
I think we've got time for one last one today. Let's see what he's got in here. Wouldn't it surprise me if this ends up being a bass? Nope, it's just a 70s Telecaster. Yeah, that's how heavy they are. 1976. But we've got the wide range humbucker in the neck because this is a custom, but we still have the regular Tele bridge pickup. But very cool to still have our ashtray. And check out the cool wood grain on our fretboard.
And this one has an asking price of $5,000.
Alright, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at some of Gary's stuff. Don't worry, we're going to have a couple more episodes like this where we just see what we can find, because it's a lot of fun when you never know what's going to be in that case. Take care.
If you enjoy looking at really clean vintage guitars, you might enjoy this insanely fresh looking Gibson Marauder that we had just recently got back and redocumented. Click here. Please, watch it.